This is Blackfinch, aka McGrip. Hello all. This is what I'm hoping will be the first of a series of reviews of World of Tanks tanks. I'm going to be focusing on vehicles that actually serve with militaries, especially in the Second World War, though later on I might look at some of the post-Second World War and end of the war tanks. With an eye to reviewing how they work in the game, my understanding of them, and throw in a little bit of the history of the real tanks to just put it all into a sort of context, though don't expect anything in the game to truly reflect reality. It is after all a game and not a simulator. So the first tank we're going to be looking at is the British Tier 4 medium tank, the Matilda Mark II. Its correct designation is the Infantry Tank Mark II, or the general specifications A12 Matilda II. And the tank was originally requested by the British military in 1936, who were after a heavier, faster three-man infantry tank. The design would change, and over sort of a 3-month process, it would eventually morph into a 4-man tank with 3 crew in the turrets, the loader, the gunner, and the commander, and the driver in the main body of the tank. As the name implies, this is an infantry tank. Now, British military doctrine at the start of the war called for 2 kinds of tanks. The first was infantry tanks, which the Matilda is an example of, that were designed to operate in support of the infantry, as the name might imply. The other type of tanks is cruiser tanks, and they get their name from naval cruisers. In the Royal Navy, the cruiser at the time was a ship designed to operate independently, and it would be fast moving and adaptable. So after 3 months of haggling and messing around with the design processes, finally a manufacturer was found, and that was going to be Vulcan Foundry in Cheshire, who were a trained locomotive builder. Most British tanks, probably all, certainly at the start of the war, were manufactured by trained manufacturers. This in itself did present a bunch of difficulties, but they were the people with the most expertise when it came to that kind of work. So just looking at from a historical context, certainly the holy trinity of tank design, as it's often called, which is damage, protection, and mobility. First of all, the armament. The Matilda's got 2 guns. First of all, it's got its anti-tank gun, the big one that you can see sticking out there, which is the 2-pounder. Now, in 1936, the 2-pound British anti-tank gun was considered to be possibly the best anti-tank gun in the world. It could certainly penetrate the armour of any known tank at that time. In support of the 2-pound gun, it was a 303 Vickers water-cooled machine gun. This would later be swapped out for a Beezer air-cooled gun, and the turret on the Matilda at the moment, which is the upgraded one, is the one with the Beezer gun. The one you start off with is the one with the Vickers, which had to have slightly different design to allow for water cooling. So of note, the 2-pound gun doesn't have highly explosive shells as an option. 2 reasons. The British military doctrine at the time was that the role of the infantry support tank was to combat other enemy tanks in support of the infantry, rather than to take out infantry targets. And the other reason being, of course, that a 2-pound explosive shell isn't particularly explosive. Think what you will of that. Say there was a machine gun in support, but the Matildas did historically struggle to deal with things like artillery until they got really very close. Later in the war, a howitzer was fitted to the Matilda, and you can get this in game, and I have tried using it, and I have to say I'm not a big fan. But this, in war terms, was just designed to fire smoke. It was believed by the British military that it would be far more effective for their support tanks to just bombard enemy infantry positions with smoke to support their infantry, rather than bombarding them with shells and presumably killing some of them at the same time. But make what you will of that tactical process. So the next thing is the armour. Now, originally when the design was conceived, this wasn't a key concern, but by the time the final design had rolled around, The tank was very heavily armoured. It boasted 75mm at the front, and the weakest point, which I think was on the top, it was 25mm. Frontally, it was capable of withstanding fire from any known anti-tank gun at the time. That would, of course, later change when the Germans introduced the 88 and the high-speed 5mm guns. But at the start of the war, it was one of the toughest tanks available to any of the forces. One of the most famous features of the tank is these big side skirts you can see. Now, the 5 holes down the side there are mud chutes designed so that when the tank is rumbling along, the mud that gets caught up in the tracks has somewhere to escape from. And finally, the final part of the trilogy is mobility. Now, the power plant that the British decided upon for this was an AEC bus engine, as you would have seen on the London Red buses. They had 2 of these fitted in the rear of the tank. The twin engine configuration had its downsides. First of all, heavy wear on components if the engines were not perfectly aligned and synchronized, and it also doubled any kind of maintenance tasks. So it's not an ideal setup, though it would go on to be used all throughout the war in numerous tanks on numerous sides as need required. The AEC engines would later be replaced with Leyland twin engines that gave it, I believe off the top of my head, around 190 horsepower. It was no fast mover. With about 7 horsepower per ton, it's a 30-ton tank. It wasn't quick. As I say, the top speed of the 1938 prototype was 15 miles an hour. In the game, you've got a top speed of 20 kilometers per hour. You will reach that, and when you get a full crew and full upgrades, going downhill, you probably get it to 25, 26, maybe 27. On the flat, 20 isn't inconceivable, but as I'm sure you've worked out by this stage, that's pretty damn slow. Now, in game terms, I'm going to throw up the stats on the screen now. The armour is very good at the front and at the side. Frontally, it is the most armoured Tier 4 tank, and you will bounce a horrendous number of shots. From the side, again, you're very armoured, and if you can angle that side, or especially if you can get it at this angle, nothing will go through until you start facing Tier 5, Tier 6 guns. Some Tier 4 tank destroyers, they're a concern, especially ones that fire high explosive shells. So that will give you a hard time. The Alacto, the Valentine AT that you'll face, those will be problematic. But most things you can shrug off an awful lot of fire. Now the rear says it's something like 60mm. That's a vicious lie. Anything that comes in under the fuel tank in those exhausts is probably going to penetrate. But what are you doing, showing people the rear of your tank anyway? But she's a very tough tank. Historically, she was renowned for being tough, and I think the game reflects that very well. The 2-pound gun. Initially, you get a Tier 3 version of this. It's not great. It's got 60mm of penetration, a really good rate of fire. Once you get this upgraded, you get over 100mm of penetration. It is an exceptional gun, a great rate of fire. It just pumps out damage, and if you can put yourself in a position where shots are bouncing off you and you've got multiple targets you can just shoot away, you will reap up the experience. It can be an absolutely devastating tank. The biggest drawback of the vehicle, which has got a very good accurate gun with a high rate of fire, doesn't have much alpha damage. But the big drawback is the speed. 20 kilometers an hour, is not fast. So you've really got to pick where you're going carefully at the start of the game, because you're going to struggle to respond things. And I'll try and show you that in the videos that are coming up. So I'm just going to throw a few of the tank stats up on the screen now, so you can see what she performs like, and then we will have a look at a couple of views of the vehicle. So we're on a Lakeville. It's a Tier 4 game, so we're top tier, which is always a bonus. notice that there's a lot of LTP tanks on both sides. It's because these were given away free for a special event to celebrate either the Russian server's 3rd birthday or Wargaming 15th, one of those two, or maybe both. So everybody was out in them. Now I've chosen to go up the valley side of this map, which I normally avoid like the plague, because it tends to be a massive war of attrition with two sides sitting either side of the hill, swapping tanks as they drive to the top of the hill and die. And eventually when one side has run out of tanks, the other side advances over, by which time, more often than not, the game's been decided elsewhere on the map anyway. So, as I say, I like to be a decisive part of the game rather than tied up on this hill. But with the Matilda, I thought it's good armour, might be good as a driving force to break the stalemate on this side. As it is, none of our team, apart from one M3 Lee, really went through the city. A few guys went up the road alongside the lake, didn't do so well, and then everyone else has come down the valley, except our artillery was obviously lurking at the back trying to offer support. So with this in mind, I thought it was absolutely imperative that we crack on and make it over. So I took more risks than I normally would in this situation, and decided that I was just going to burst over the top, hope that the team follow me, and see what we can do to force a result. Now I normally hate getting in the way of people who are reversing, but just time was of the essence as far as I was concerned, and that guy wasn't achieving anything up there. The LTP doesn't have a very good gun, which I'm grateful for at this moment in time because it's shooting at me quite a bit now. I'm spraying shots around a little bit to just try and force people back, so I got rid of those couple, but this guy was a bit braver, so in the end we finished him off. Panzer III here, we had nowhere to go, so it's quite enjoying finishing him off. The gun is exceptional, you see a great rate of fire, awesome penetration, good accuracy. Really forcing these guys back. The team seems to have followed me because I'm not getting many kills and there's lots of stuff dying. But it's all about the damage you do. The game places too much emphasis on kills visually, but you earn experience for damage, not a small bonus for securing a kill. But let's go rest. Now I get a rare bounce here, which is slightly frustrating because it means someone else gets the kill. And having just said that they're not so important, they are enjoyable to get. But damage is the key. Damage is the contribution that wins games. Winning games gives you a much bigger experience bonus than securing kills, but losing games. And people really do obsess over finishing tank fire, and sometimes it's better to just move on to the next target and leave the battle of tanks your teammates to finish. Now here we get to see the Matilda's superb speed of not very fast, as the team is pulling away. It's absolutely imperative that you, when you're driving the Matilda, you don't stop unless you have to. I mean, you know, stopping to aim, that's all well and good, but any other times it's quite unadvisable. See, we're kind of blessed that the enemy team has seen us all bursting over the hill and they've all come running back to try and prevent us from getting the cap. It's 10-4 at this stage, it's probably a foregone conclusion. And I'm all for capitalising on this. Again, great rate of fire, great accuracy, low damage, but it doesn't matter. Your tank can afford to poke its nose out and be aggressive and punchy. It's very much an in-your-face, brawling kind of tank. This is absolutely where it's at its best. People know where to hide, just swapping shots, and their shots aren't doing anything. Now at this stage, after the escapades at the top of the hill, my tank's not in the best of states, but I'm fairly confident I can bounce the odd shot, and there's plenty of other targets that are softer for them to be aiming for, and I suspect at this stage they're just trying to get as many kills as they can and consolidate things. So pretty much secured the win. There's just one artillery to mop up, and with the speed of Matilda, I'm not expecting to get there in time. No, she is a good little tank. Perhaps the reason that the Matilda was in production in the UK till 1943, and in Australia and the Commonwealth she was in production all throughout the war, making like the fact that the Panzer IV was hailed for being in production from start to finish. The Matilda shares it. So let's have a look at the end plates. 29,000 credits and 1,339 experience. That's undoubled, but there was an event on to get you some bits and pieces this weekend, so I think it was 1.5 times experience of finishing in the top 3 and credits, but still not too bad. 1,155 damage, good for the tier. Particular damage received of 1678, steel wall, 23 hits received. So the next game, airfield. This time it was a tier 5 game. So while we're waiting for this to load, I'll give you a few more facts about Matilda. Highlighted or prompted by the desert surroundings. Matilda was known as the Queen of the Desert. She served in all theatres, the Eastern Front as a Lend-Lease tank, in the Pacific, especially with the Australian Army, and in the early European withdrawals, and finally, and most famously, in Tunisia and North Africa, where she picked up that nickname. There were a number of variants of Matilda produced. The Scorpion 1 and 2, which had a rotating mine flail on the front, powered by an engine mounted on the side of the tank on a big old box that some poor unfortunate had to sit in what looked particularly uncomfortable and cramped circumstances next to a hot engine. Rather him than me. The Matilda CDL Canal Defence Light variant, which had bright lights fitted on the front that were designed to startle and blind the enemy during night fighting. There was the A27 turret variant, which was an attempt to mount a 6-pound gun on the Matilda. There was a black Prince variant, which was an attempt at a radio controlled Matilda, the purpose of which I'm not rightly sure about, but if someone would like to put that down the bottom, I'd appreciate to know what it was. The close support with the 3-inch howitzer, that's a version you can get in this game. And then the Australians had a couple of other versions, the Matilda Frog, which had a flamethrower, a version with dozer blades fitted, and the Matilda Hedgehog, which had a 7-chambered mortar in an armoured box at the rear of the hull. Now, as you can see, the Matilda is as slow as possible. I came down this way because it gives a couple of options, and I'm trying to react to where the opponents pop up. I can see that there's a RKV-1's trooping down this side, so I'm moving to support him. Unfortunately, he doesn't last terribly much longer versus that opposition, but I wasn't to know that at this stage. You will curse the Matilda speed, unfortunately. But once you learn to use it and you weigh it against its other virtues, the great gun and the great protection, I'd still say on balance it's an exceptional tank. Now, part of the reason she was called the Queen of the Desert was because in 1940, when she went to the desert initially, they were facing the Italians, and the Italians didn't have any anti-tank guns really, or any vehicles that could tackle the Matilda. It was absolutely obliterating anything it came across. In terms of tanks, certainly, versus infantry, we've talked about its shortcomings already. And problems that it suffered in other theatres, like when it was involved in the withdrawals at Dunkirk. There were a lot of clutch issues that stemmed from driving down twisting country lanes. Now you're not so heavy on your clutch in the desert. For a start, there's lots of sand and you don't have to turn quite so often. So problems that dogged it elsewhere didn't in the desert. So it really shone. That being said, Rommel commented on the Matilda to say in his memoirs, the British employ large numbers of Matildas, which on account of their thick armour were impervious to most German anti-tank guns. He was however puzzled by other aspects of the design and went on to say of the gun, they were only supplied with a solid AP shells, that's armour penetration. It would be interesting to know why the vehicle was called an infantry tank, yet has no HE, high explosive ammunition, with which to engage the opposing infantry. Finally, he would note, it was also in fact far too slow. In fact, its only real use was in a straight punch to smash a hole in concentration of material, much as you saw me use in the previous game. his view was echoed by a lot of the British commanders and the people who used the Matilda. It was slow, struggled to react to where it was needed on the battlefield, but it certainly was tough and resilient. And until the Germans brought in the 88s and the Pack 5s, etc., it wasn't threatened by too much. By 1943, of course, the Panzer IV Specials and the Tigers, etc., could eat through it. Not to mention all of the 88mm flak guns that the Germans quickly realised if you pointed them down were tremendous versus tanks. Hence the inspiration from mounting one on the Tiger. Now, that little episode we just had there was a little bit of heaven. Shooting down on anything from there. You saw the Matilda's gun at work. It was high rate of fire. You can rely on it to penetrate even the armour of the heavies, certainly from the top. And I have to say, the water coming through the mud chutes is also a pleasing visual effect that they've added to the game. So, yeah, quick look at the 20,000, 1,163 experience. Quite pleasing. No medals won this time. The 5 kills, but not a lot of damage. Mostly because whatever I found had already been hit pretty hard. I didn't receive much, and there were penetrations due to fighting the higher tier tanks, but the gun really was demonstrated well there. So, overall impressions of the Matilda. I mean, aside from the things that I've said, it's slow, it's got a great gun, it's got great armour, and hopefully you've got a feel of that in the couple of games that you've got to watch. Downsides that you won't see from playing it. Now, if you're just playing the Matilda, like most people are, because they want to get onto the British heavies, the Churchills, and then the Carnarvon and the Conqueror, you've got two options. You can either go the path leading through the Matilda or the path leading through the Valentine. Now, I haven't unlocked masses here because, again, as I said, this is the Russian server, but the path leading to the Matilda, the medium one, well, everyone has to play that. The medium 2, in my opinion, is a contender for the worst tier 2 tank. You're not going to play more than a dozen games in it, so it's not the biggest sin in the world. But then the medium 3 is a contender for the worst tier 3 tank. So you've got to suffer yet again. Now the Matilda, I think it's a really good tank. I've had some great results in it. It's some really, really good games. The other option is the Cruiser 1, Cruiser 2 Valentine. The Cruisers, they aren't great either. I think none of the British 1, 2, the Valentine AT is a really good tank, but none of the low British ones are great. But they're a little more fun. They get slightly better guns, in my opinion. The Valentine, some people prefer the Valentine to the Matilda. In a straight-out fight, the Matilda will beat the Valentine every time, but it's a bit faster. It's also pretty armoured, more stealthy, also slow, slightly different gun, higher out for damage, so to be used in different ways. So, yeah, horses for courses there, really. You're not going to linger on either of them too much. Now, as tier 4 tanks go, I think one of them, tier 4 is notorious for tier being terrible, but British do really well. The Covenant is a great tank. The Electo, I have no idea how it's pronounced. It's good if you know what you're doing. It's got a good gun and it's fast. But paper armor, and when people spot you, they will kill you straight away because you are an easy kill that can do a lot of damage. The Matilda, excellent tank. The Valentine, good tank. I haven't tried the artillery yet. I'm only just going down that path, and to be fair, I'm not a huge fan of artillery. I don't think it takes a tremendous amount of skill to stare at a map and click on where you see a tank. I expect to be berated by artillery players in the comments, but you know what? I don't care. The Chinese get the Stuart, which is a good tank. I haven't seen how it compares to the US Stuart. The French, the B1, oh god, horrible tank. Now the AMX-40 is a Marmite tank. For those of you that don't know what Marmite is, it's a food available in the UK and it's famous for the fact that people either love it or they loathe it, and that's true for the AMX-40. The loathers being in the majority and the lovers being in the minority. I have to admit to being one of that minority. It's a slow, really armoured tank. I had ridiculous. I mean, I only played 20-30 games in it in total, but ridiculous results in those games. So I picked on the ELC AMX, and that's all good fun down there. I have tried the artillery, and that's not a bad tank destroyer. So the Americans, yeah, well, it's a bit hit and miss here. The two American tank destroyers fare fairly well. If you look at the statistics, they're some of the best performing tank destroyers at this level. The Stuart is a really good tank. The M3 is good. The M5, I think the M3 is probably slightly superior, but others will disagree with me. Again, artillery, really ventured down that path, so I can't comment. Look to other people for advice there. The M3 Lee, though, in my honest opinion, absolutely worst part of junk in the game. So the Germans, Hetzer, good. Panzer 38, okay. Panzer III, VK2001, they're the looks. Yeah, I quite enjoyed the looks, I have to admit. And then the Russians, Su-85B, lovely tank destroyer. T-80, Marmite tank again. I quite liked it. I know a lot of people who hate it. The A-20 is a pretty good tank, but takes some getting used to. The T-50, I mean, you know, takes a path to the T-34. Again, a good tank. You will get higher tier games because it is designated as scout. It's pretty good at scouting. The T-28, if you're a really good player, it's a good tank. It's got a good gun. It's quite quick, but its armor's paper thin, and any mistakes you do make will get punished. So I'd say it's an okay tank. And then, you know, the Valentine's Premium, and we're on to silly artillery here. So relative to the others at tier 4, I think the Matilda's a pretty good tank. One of the best. I don't know if it's the best at tier 4, but it certainly is. Now, as you noticed, I play a lot of Matilda games with some of my friends on the Russian servers, and it is so mine is pimped to the max. I went with vents for the extra crew skills because they're always good. The gun rammer and the laying drive for the aiming speed and the loading time, just so it can put out damage that much faster. That gun's really good. Now, the replays were all recorded before I put these on the tank, so I've had a couple of games since, and it does make a noticeable difference. We all decided that we were going to stick with Matildas. Don't ask me why. Now the crew skills. Now for your commander, just looking at the skills that are available. Mentor, yeah, not a bad choice. Recon, never really been bothered about view range. You're always the last tank, not the first. Some other people spotted things for you. Jack of all trades, you do lose the odd crew member. I see the point in that, but just buy a medical kit. The Eagle's Eye, that's really one of those skills that I wouldn't bother getting till really late. Now, Sixth Sense, I think it's great for all commanders to get, but I'm only at 70%, so I've opted for repairs. You do get things knocked out all the time, but you don't want to be wasting repair kits on your track, especially at this level. Ideally, you don't want to be wasting repair kits at all, but sometimes the need's there. So for the gunner, I went with snapshot, increased accuracy during turret rotation. This thing's going to be moving and firing a lot. The gun's accurate, and the snapshot really does help. Deadeye would be a third or fourth choice for this. Armourer, I generally just repair the damaged gun. Designated target, again, you've got to get it to 100%, so it would be probably a fifth or sixth choice. After that, I'd look at repairs and camouflage, and after all, the guys have got a couple of skills. Brothers in Arms is not a bad choice for that extra 5% to everything. Gives you the reloads, gives you the faster reloads, the more accurate gun, the slightly higher speed, better view ranges. Very much the logic for putting the improved vents on, just to improve everything a little bit. So for your driver, Skills. Click the right button, it'd help Rich. Right, I went for Smooth Ride is a fairly good choice for firing on the move, but I went for off-road driving. That'll be the next skill I get. And then probably preventative maintenance, because I find this thing does get a lot of engine fires, but again it's a skill you need to get to 100%, and if I've gone for Brothers in Arms with the rest of the crew, if I persevered with the Matilda that long, which is, let's be honest, unlikely, this is very hypothetical. And then radio operator skills, they're all pretty rubbish. View range for some tanks is the extended view range is handy for some tanks, but I just gone for repairs on this one. If it was a sneaky tank, I'd go for camouflage. Firefighting wouldn't be a bad idea, because as I say, I do get a lot of fires. People hit this bit and up you go, and they soon learn that they can't damage you there or there. So, I mean, to sum up, pretty good tank. I would highly recommend it. I've invested some dosh in it and plan to be playing lots of platoon games. It's a good little bit of light relief after playing some of the higher tier games, and enjoyable to just romp around and bounce shots. Everybody loves that. I hope you found this review insightful, and hopefully there should be more coming up in the near future. Just on one final note, I'd like to add, if you do spot anything, especially some of the historic details that are incorrect, I'm very, very welcome to criticisms and corrections, and would appreciate your feedback down below. If you like the video, please stick a like, and feel free to follow my channel. I have got a number of other videos on here, a number of Master Badge games if you just want to see how those have played out, a couple of little comical things that I'm adding as and when they happen. So at some point I might put together some tutorial videos on just learning the basics of World of Tanks. So until next time, see you around, and have fun out there on the battlefield.